Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this DIACA's online event on waste management. In this session, we are discussing about the issues related to domestic waste and how to tackle it at an individual level. Before I start this talk, I would like to take this opportunity to speak about our group, DIACA Goa. DIACA Goa is a 3-year-old group started by a group of like minded friends to spread the message of love through art, literature, culture, and also ecology. In these 3 years, we have done various story reading sessions where we have read stories of eminent writers like Sadat Hasan Manto, Girish Karnad, Prem Chand, and our very own Damodar Mauzo. We now also use this platform to speak about our ecology, and thus we are gathered here today to speak about waste, the pressing issue which we literally come across at nook and corners of our cities and villages. In Goa, we have issues related to mixed waste, and major chunk of it is the plastic waste. Plastic waste is one of the top environmental problems of the world. According to the global reports, only 9% of plastic is recycled, and out of which only 10% is recycled more than once, 12% is incinerated, and around 80% goes to landfills and oceans. In India, according to the Central Pollution Control Board report of 2018 and 19, India generates 3.3 million metric tons of plastic waste per year. Goa produces 60 grams per capita per day of plastic waste. The national average is 8 grams per capita per day. So it is high time that we realize the seriousness of this issue. And to know more on this topic, we have with us here Sarita Sudhakaran of Wasteless Project, who will speak on the topic, Is Zero Waste Lifestyle Possible? Sarita Sudhakaran is an urban design consultant whose professional work spans fields such as sustainable mobility, transport, health, education, policy, public space, architecture, and waste management. In 2017, she was invited as a planning advisor by the Goa Waste Management Corporation in the preparation of waste management plans for two pilot villages. She founded the Wasteless Project in January 2019 with an aim to create awareness on waste reduction through a collective knowledge sharing process. The 12-week project is a structured guide that provides local, adaptable, and scalable alternatives to unsustainable consumption choices, thereby encouraging consumers to reconsider the definition of waste. Through its numerous awareness sessions, workshops, and initiatives, the project is successfully championing the argument for waste minimization with community level interactions and collaborations across India. So now I invite Sarita to present her talk on the topic, Is Zero Waste Lifestyle Possible? Sarita, over to you.
Thank you for the opportunity to present today on the subject of waste, which is very relevant, like you said. But for me, it's also not just close to the work that I do as a professional urban designer, but it's also my way of life. It's the way I've chosen to live my life today. And that's why I never hesitate from talking about anything related to waste, whatever knowledge that I have. So today, our question that's been put forth is zero waste possible? And I did not, when Aarti approached me about this subject, I was not sure how to structure my presentation today, primarily because when we already are narrowing it down to a subject like zero waste, I have to make assumptions that people know what waste is, people know what waste management is, people know what zero waste is. And I wasn't sure what the profile of my audience was. So what I try to do is very simply and as succinctly as possible put together, all of this information in a couple of slides. And I'll probably take about 25 minutes, and then I'll be open for Q&A after that for as long as it takes to clarify people's questions. So before we understand or we get to this question and try to, collectively today arrive at a answer to this question, let's establish an understanding of the subject matter in that question, which is zero waste. Let's try to understand what zero waste is. And it would be nice if, you all can just take a couple of seconds, think about what is your understanding of zero waste. If anybody wants to indulge me, unmute yourself. One participant can probably even tell us what they think is zero waste. I'm not going to be a teacher and just randomly call out somebody. But others can definitely, put that down in the chat box as well, because it'll be interesting for me to know what you think is zero waste. So I'll just wait for 5 seconds in case anybody wants to take a shot at it. Otherwise, I'll continue. So from my experience, working in this space, what I've learned is most people, when they hear the term zero waste, they assume that means no waste. So that is what the equivalent of zero waste is to many people. The idea of no waste. I don't blame them, because zero is ultimately a number which has no value in a lot of ways. In popular culture also, from the time that this phrase was coined in the US to now globally where it is being used, this one image is the most commonly used image when the conversation of zero waste is put forth. So there'll be this one person who's holding a jar with lots of random things inside, and this is sort of like the face or the ideal that people are expected to achieve. And my question is, what is in the mason jar if it's not waste? I mean, that is waste. So people have successfully managed to fit a lot of their trash into a mason jar, and they call that zero waste, which when I started out, for me, was a little bit of a confusing concept, because, as a beginner, this sets very high expectations. It sets very high goals for you. To even believe that it is possible is it's like a big thing. So this is where I started as well. I started with this image in my head that within a couple of years, this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to have a jar full of trash, and I'll show you the reality. Obviously, that's what this presentation is about. But let me clarify that zero waste does not mean no waste. Okay, it is not. The one thing I'm very, very sure of is this: it does not mean no waste. Zero waste, to understand it, you'll first have to then break it further to understand what waste is. What is waste? Very simply put, waste is something when it gets generated from anybody's home or establishment or wherever it gets generated, it's collected, it's transported, it reaches what is called a material recovery facility or an MRF. This is done either by government or non-government private entities. There could be formal workers involved, informal workers involved. They then sort out the different types of waste, transport the different types of waste for processing. And this is usually done by low-wage workers across our country, at least. And processing is like the final sort of destination for different types of waste. So sometimes processing looks like this, where it is sorted out, it is baled out into these blocks, and it could be sent for incineration, it could be sent for recycling, repurposing, composting, or biogas, depending on what the waste is. Sometimes it's landfilled, and this is an example of a landfill. It could be a scientific landfill or an unscientific landfill. I'm not going to explain any of this because this session is not about waste management, but just to give you an idea of what happens to the waste once it leaves, our individual homes. This is what happens to it. Many a times the waste gets buried like this. Most often, this is what we see. We see open dump, or we see burning of waste. Waste, who decides what is waste, and when is it decided what is waste? In my opinion, a thing is called waste when it is written off as not having a value or a purpose or a use. I mean, when do you put anything in a dustbin? When you have finally decided that you don't have any use for that item, when you don't have any sentimental value or emotional value for that item, when no one is offering to pay you any money for that item, that's when you decide that this thing is not for me, and you are ready to give it away, or throw it away, or whatever is the way in which you want to dispose of it. But what if waste was given value? What if it was given use? Or what if it was given some sort of a purpose? And this was the first question that I had when I started off on this sort of a journey. I'll give you an example with something which all of us use at some point of time, which is food containers. Most homes, we have some sort of a purchased produce like jams or sauces or spreads or butters or and this could be anything. Like I'm just using Kisan jam as an example. But once we've consumed what is inside this bottle, many of us decide we have no use for this bottle, and so we throw it. Some of us decide that we want to use this bottle, not throw it, reuse it. Okay. In this system, one person will call it waste, one person will call it a resource. So there's no unified phrase, right? It's completely dependent from person to person whether they want to call an object waste or they don't want to call an object waste. But then there's that question, how many jars can you reuse? If you decide to reuse, if you decide to make a resource out of waste, how many of them can you really reuse? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Because if you don't want it, somebody else will want it. There's always somebody who has a need for it. And we've kind of moved away from this concept of thinking about, a larger section of society or the people around us. We can use it to gift people. It's the festival season, so why not? Like, why not put the mithai that you're anyway going to give your family, the sweets that you're going to distribute? You want to think of something innovative as a gift. You can put plants in it. So there's always a use for a resource like a food jar. In this case, what would we call it? Would we call it waste or resource? But then the argument comes, how many jars can others reuse, right? Because we can't keep dumping all our unwanted jars on people. Again, it doesn't matter, because if no one on this planet has a use for it, someone is still there who can earn their living from waste. And a lot of us don't understand this. We don't understand that just because we have written something off as waste does not mean that it does not have a value still. Let's take clean and sorted glass, for example. Clean and sorted glass can earn anywhere between 2 to 3 rupees a kilo if it is given out properly to a collector who collects glass. So imagine the amount of money somebody can earn in a month by just collecting glass which we don't have use for. So in my opinion, many things which are called waste might not actually be waste. To sort of understand this a little better, in schools, I mean, even I was taught the 3 R's, which then became the 5 R's, which became the 7 R's. I think today any word in the dictionary which starts with an R can be associated with waste in some way or the other. But it seems like a joke today to me, but it still is valid when you think about it, to follow the R's. If you reuse things, okay, if you repurpose things, a lot of things can be given a second life. If you revalue things, so what we see over here as waste can be given, I wouldn't say can be given a second life, can be made into something which has a lot of value. Or simply, if we recycle things, that itself, when we stop calling things waste and we start calling it and start using things as resources instead, that's when zero waste happens. Zero waste, simply put, is the recovery of resources instead of burning them, instead of burying them, instead of landfilling them, instead of writing them off. That is the concept of zero waste. So if you ask me, is zero waste possible? I would say yes. How? You just find a use or find a value, find a purpose for whatever you are calling waste, and automatically you're going to plug into the system that is known as zero waste. Everything, most things actually, I can't say everything, has a value. And for example, the plastics industry itself, the commodity, the home plastics that come out of a house in Goa, some of the rates for plastics is this, like something like PET bottles. If you've collected PET bottles from your neighborhood, clean them out and stock them and give it to plastic recycling collector or even a waste collector, you can expect to get about 15 rupees per kilo for PET bottles, whereas things like Tetra Pak have a slightly low value. So every item of waste that we think is waste is actually a resource for the next person in line, for the next person in the industrial chain. And there is a value for most things that is thrown out today. So if there is a value for everything, which obviously it doesn't take a rocket scientist or even somebody like me to come board and give you all this information. Everyone knows there's value in waste. The waste sector knows there's value in waste. And in spite of all this, why doesn't zero waste already happen? Because this is our vision, or this is the image that for many decades now we have associated with this subject called waste. We think, if you just close your eyes, or if you ask a child to draw waste, this is probably what 80% of the people or adults or even children would draw, right? A garbage bag or a garbage bin at the max. Or the more innovative ones would literally draw a dump. But that is what is the image of this word called waste. I would say this is our relationship with waste. Okay, our relationship with waste has become put everything into this one bag or one container, and out of my house, out of my sight, out of my mind, it is somebody else's problem. So I come back to this question of our topic again: is zero waste possible? Let's see if it's possible. Let's see how it is possible. And remember, zero waste is not no waste. Zero waste is recovery of resources. Zero waste starts with segregation. I hate to say this to you, but segregation of waste is the default first step for resource recovery. Let me try and put this also in a way in which you would understand. If you give out mixed waste, and which most of us are guilty of doing, right? Like I said, we put everything into this one bag and we give it out. When somebody has to separate mixed waste for a waste sorter, it is like asking him to separate out all those individual whole spices or all the individual grains of rice from a pot full of biryani, because I'm assuming everyone knows what a biryani is. For example, 100 people, okay, 100 people would require about 25 kilos of biryani. Imagine asking one person to sit and sort out all the dry spices, all the grains of rice from that 25 kilos of biryani. That is exactly what waste sorting is. One or two individuals have to sit and pick out all the different types of waste which we give out. So things like, small batteries, your hair which you don't need, a band-aid, a stapler pin, a bottle cap. Look at the size of these items. And then there's also the bigger ones, which are like plastic bottles or plastic bags. One individual on a daily basis has to separate out all of these different pieces of waste from mixed waste that we give out. I would say the ratio is one person has to do it for 100 people. This is the challenge. So if you want to pursue down the road of zero waste, start with this first step, which is segregate your resources. This isn't very hard. All you need to do is a basic 5-way segregation. 5-way segregation is organic or your wet waste as we know it, glass and metals, washed and dried plastic, paper and cardboard. And there's going to be a lot of things which you are not sure of, which you don't know where it falls, whether it's recyclable, whether it's non-recyclable. Just keep a separate container exclusively for that. The most important thing that you have to remember when you're segregating your waste is that if you are going to throw anything which has food remnants in it, for example, milk packets or Tetra Pak packets which have milk or cream or tomato sauce or coconut milk, or if you're going to throw peanut butter jars or anything which has especially wet food remnants in it, it has to be cleaned out. Because you have to understand a very basic thing. It's not like, the minute a collector comes and picks up the waste from your house, it has automatically reached a recycling facility. That's not how it happens. Like I showed in the earlier slide, there's a process where he has to pick it up, then he has to transport it to a MRF facility. From the MRF, further sorting is done. Then they decide which waste has to leave that unit on what day. There's a lot of logistics involved. Sometimes your milk packet, which you've given out today morning, will only reach a recycling facility in 10 or 15 days. You know what happens when you leave milk unattended on your platform counter. The same thing is going to happen if you give unwashed or dirty milk packets in your trash. It's going to attract flies, it's going to attract rodents, it's going to attract creepy crawlies. The worst scenario is that it's going to contaminate all the other types of waste that it is lying with. And when that happens, even if you've done this basic segregation, if you've missed one packet, it will contaminate all the waste that it is going with, which means this entire lot will make its way into a landfill and all of your effort is useless. Okay. But yeah, so start with segregation of resources. When you segregate your waste into these basic 5 components, what you'll also start noticing is a very interesting pattern, which is about 60% of your waste is organic, about 20% would be recyclable, 10% would be what is called as toxic waste, and 10% is what is called as reject waste. Now, this is a figure achieved pan-India. So pan-urban India, I would say. Rural India, obviously, the organic waste quantity would be much, much more higher. But in urban India, 60 to 65 to 70% also is composed of organic waste. So the next step in a zero waste journey is to compost your organic waste. Composting, again, I wish I could have gone into a lot of detail, but each of these topics is something that I conduct workshops on for, like weekly workshops and stuff, because that's how detailed most of these subjects are. But for those who don't know, composting is simply when something like this becomes something like this. It's as simple as that, if I could say so. What composting does for you, though, is it will help you grow your own food. And what I'm showing you is about 5 or 6 images of around 50 edible plants that I had in this past year in a balcony garden space of, I would say, 5 square meters, so around 50 square feet at the max. But in that balcony garden, in a year, in the seasonal period, I grow almost 50 edible plants. And all of this is possible simply because I have enough compost to feed my plants that give me, amazing food, cutting down my expenses of purchasing vegetables. The next step is all of the things which can be recycled, you sell it off. Okay. And pan India, I know that there are waste collectors, sometimes even government initiatives, like in Panjim, for example. Now the corporation has come up with the trash for cash system. But what I do is I have a friend who is a private waste collector very close to where I live, and I go and give my waste to him. I don't expect to be paid for it, but it is an option there. Like I said in the beginning, there is a value for everything. So if you are somebody, your household is somebody that generates a lot of waste, you can even be rewarded back for giving clean, dry waste. That is the catchphrase. It has to be clean, it has to be dry, and it has to be sorted out correctly so that the people at the waste management unit don't have to spend more time sorting out what you have claimed is clean and dry. Most of them would even give you a receipt for your waste, so that's it's authentic. But once you've done this, once you've just composted your waste, and once you've just managed your recyclable, imagine out of that bag which you give every day in the morning, 80% of it you have already managed it yourself, which means you don't need an external government dependency or a private waste collector dependency on a daily basis. You don't need that. Actually, you can do it on your own. But there are a lot of things that won't fit into these hours of recycling, reusing, repurposing, etc. Things like sanitary waste, diapers, sanitary pads, tampons, condoms, all of that. And then there's also a lot of confusing things which we think are plastics, which might get recycled, but they are not. And I generally tell people, don't bother yourself too much about these kind of things, because the packaging industry is getting more and more confusing for an average consumer to make any sense, which is why I had that fifth separate dabba in which, anything that I don't understand just goes into that. But even for these kind of things, there's always better alternatives for these products. How do you find these alternatives? Step 4 of the zero waste process is support your local economy. So if you start shopping in a neighborhood store, okay, like I'm sure every city in India, every village in India has a store where things are still sold like this. So instead of going to a shop and buying a piece of plastic, which we don't know whether it is recyclable or not recyclable usually as a consumer, but I can tell you that most of this plastic, where in which grains and pulses and all of these dry food, rava, suji, all of this comes, the plastic that is used for it is mostly number 7. Number 7 is a non-recyclable plastic. Okay, so imagine the amount of non-recyclable plastic you're bringing into your home if you shop from these big stores, big supermarkets. We don't even know if they use food grade plastics to package their produce. Here, at least you see it, you're feeling the product. You can buy how much ever you want. You don't even have to go and buy the 250 grams or the 500 grams or the 1 kilo that you're forced to buy in such a circumstance. So try and support your local economy and shop within your neighborhood. You can refuse what you don't need, which means you don't need packaging. Okay, nobody needs package. You're not asking for the packaging. If you carry your own packaging, that problem is resolved. Start by carrying your own bags. This image is about 1/4 of the bag collection that I have. I have a lot of cloth bags of different shapes and sizes. Never would fit in one photograph. But other than cloth bags, start carrying dabbas for everything, like your vegetables, your pulses, your grains, anything and everything, including your non-vegetarian food. You can just use your own containers and buy it. And the reason I say this is because I have not come across a single shopkeeper, a single vendor in India who refuses produce simply because you've taken your own container. Let's understand one thing. These people are not selling the packaging. They're selling what's inside the packaging. So if you take your own containers and if you go shopping, nobody is going to say no to you. So start refusing shit that the brands are selling us. That's the first thing as consumers we need to understand. The last step I would say is prioritize your health. Um, a lot of personal care, home care products have unnecessary, unnecessarily ridiculous ingredients stuffed into them, which are not safe for you, which are not safe for your body, which are not safe for the environment, because all of this is going down as wastewater down your drain. There are a lot of options for all this, and be it menstruation for a woman, be it dental hygiene, be it home care solutions, everything has a safe and chemical free alternative in today's world. If you're somebody like me who loves to DIY, you can make your own things. If not, there are so many brands out there who are selling these products today that you can just go and get them. You don't have to sponsor people's trips to out of space by investing in their mega corporations. You don't have to buy a Nestle, you don't have to buy a P&G. There are local small businesses that would rather benefit from your investments, and you would benefit in terms of your health. So when you do all of those 6 steps, what you will realize is slowly and eventually you would manage 90% of your resources. Okay, the 100% that you give out, 90% is something that you can take care of on your own. What is left is 10% of toxic stuff. And toxic stuff is generally things like e-waste, hazardous things like tube lights and batteries, paint containers, a tire of your vehicle. But think about it, none of these things are waste we generate on a daily basis. These are all waste which probably will happen once or twice or thrice in a year. What you can do is you manage that 10% safely. You store it, you collect it when you have access to a responsible collector. So there are e-waste collection drives that, again, government agencies and private individuals both undertake. You don't have to give it with your daily waste. You can give it specifically during these drives, because these are the responsible collectors, are the people who know how to take it apart, how to take the precious parts, how to take the chemicals out of e-waste, for example, and then what to do with the things which has to be disposed of. And you can store these waste. This is how I do it. Before my husband moved to a reusable shaver and razor, he used to use disposable razors, and we used to just collect it till this entire container would be filled and we would give it out. Similarly, batteries, we just keep collecting the batteries, and when the batteries are filled into this container is when we give it. We don't throw it on a daily basis. And you can do this with a lot of things, small stapler pins or ATM slips. Everything can be collected, because these kind of waste will not spoil, they don't go bad, they don't rot. So again, is zero waste possible? Yes, it is possible, by managing your resources yourself. So this is the end of one's responsibility to their waste. But it is not the end of your responsibility towards sustainability or towards the future. And that's a very important part of the work I do, because I work as a sustainability practitioner. I could have ended today's presentation here, but I chose not to. Why zero waste is not for me is a topic I wanted to cover. And I asked Aarti if I could do this. And the reason being, I will sort of showcase this, using the example of Goa, which is where I work and which is where I live. So in Goa, this is like a very rough graphical illustration of the waste management scenario of last year. So let's assume that Goa has a population X. This population is around 15 lakh as per the census of India, but it's a very outdated figure. This X population generates about Y tons of waste. The Y tons, again, the only figure that I have is 766 tons, which was released by the Goa Waste Management Corporation sometime last year. So X produces around Y tons of waste. And what happens to this Y tons of waste today is it gets processed or incinerated, it gets landfilled. Okay, so depending on what type of waste, manageable, unmanageable, these are the two main ways in which it kind of gets tackled. Now, waste management infrastructure, I wanted to understand what the waste management infrastructure in Goa was. So I didn't do any major research. I didn't go knocking on any government bodies' doors, asking them, give me the answers. All I did was I looked at some local newspapers, and they always have articles about, what the government is planning, what is ongoing, etc. So I mapped out all of the present, all of the under construction, all of the proposed waste management units that the government has proposed or the government has undertaken so far in Goa. Okay, some of them I also managed to get what is their capacity of management. So for example, let's say like Perne has a 10-ton capacity, etc. When you add up all of this, it gives you a figure of around 1185 tons. Now, as a sustainability practitioner, as an urban designer, my role is to always look into the future. So when I project this in the future, today we are at 766 tons at 2020. Somewhere around 2045 is when the capacity of 1184 tons will, it's projected that Goa will generate 1184 tons somewhere around 2045. It could be faster. There's no way we can say. It could be slower also. But let's just say it's 2045, which means 2045, by 2045, what is going to happen is our population would not have stayed at X. It would have gone, X plus plus plus. That X plus 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 population would have generated Y plus 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 tons of garbage, which means we would need more treatment facilities and more landfills, okay, in just 25 years. When we talk about resource management in the future, we are talking about land acquisition. We all know what a challenge it is for government to get land. There's always constant battles. We know consensus building among population is a challenge. We know environment clearances are a challenge. We know that infrastructure development is such a hassle. We know finance management is a challenge. We don't know whether we can trust our governments. There's corruption. Uh, and for all of this, we have to keep extracting resources because, building a factory, where does all that concrete and where does all that cement and sand and metal and glass, where does it come from? It comes from the earth. So all of that resource extraction has to happen. How sustainable is this if we have to keep repeating this model every 20 years? Because the population is always going to increase, which means the amount of garbage is always going to increase, which means we're always going to have to keep managing our trash. So for me, management of waste is never a sustainable solution. In fact, even among, there's this Waste Management Association of Goa, which is formed. And I keep telling them, if you want to have conversations about Goa waste management, I am not the person, because I've stopped believing that waste needs to be managed. Okay. I don't think it is a sustainable solution at all. Now, population control is not something I can talk about. It's a very taboo subject. But what if there was no waste? What if instead of trying to find band-aid solutions like waste management, we tackle the problem at its root? What if there was no waste? And this is where I started something called the 12-week Wasteless Project. I started in
19. I'm not
2019.
going
I'm
to
not
get
going to
into
get
a lot
into
of
a lot of
detail,
detail,
but it,
but basically what the Wasteless Project is that throughout every week, I focus on one specific area and then educate or build awareness and give lots of solutions about that particular area. We start with knowing the different types of waste, disposing it correctly, reducing single use, shopping and storing food, growing and cooking your own food, how to convert your food waste into wealth, how to start saying refuse, how to make simple daily changes, how to make your own things like toothpaste and body care and home care, chemical-free homes, which is a big, big thing because we cover everything from mosquito repellents to cleaners to whatnot. And the final week is usually dedicated to inspiring people to scale up the knowledge that they have gained in the last 11 weeks and kind of put it out into the community so that knowledge gets accelerated. Keeping that knowledge within ourselves is pointless because it's not going to benefit anybody except one person. So I always inspire people, or I always request people to scale up this knowledge sharing. So, but what I realized after, almost so many years of the project is that even when we waste less, right? That's what I call it. I don't call it zero waste. We are reducing our waste, definitely. But we still expect management of waste because all the recyclable waste, what is going to happen to it? Somebody has to manage it. When somebody has to manage it, we are putting a pressure in terms of money, in terms of land, in terms of energy, in terms of people, time, water, so much of materials that's getting extracted from the planet. And if I were to give you an example, I showed you that organic waste can become this, right? But for this in itself to happen, for us to just be able to have food on our table, to make this food, does anybody think of how much money, land, energy, etc., 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 gets expended in that process, right? So my belief is just because green matter is compostable doesn't mean that we shouldn't try cooking with it first. And this is an example of cauliflower. Most of us take the florets. Some of us also take the leaves. Many of us throw this. This is the only bit of a cauliflower that gets thrown at my house because that's the way I've started thinking. I've started thinking about everything that has gone into producing that one cauliflower and how easily it is for me to just dump this whole thing and call it waste. So what I live today is not a zero waste lifestyle. I can't say I'm living a sustainable life. Unfortunately, I am also a victim of the consumption, the global consumption economy that we are in. But these are some of the core beliefs that I have, that just because resources can be managed, just because we say recycling is a solution, without understanding how much of water, how much of transportation, how much of energy actually gets wasted in the process of recycling, it does not mean that we can continue to consume infinitely. It does not mean that we just keep consuming and consuming and consuming, because what are we going to leave for the future if our generation consumes it all? It does not mean that we continue to extract from the planet. We have to
We
understand
have
that
to understand
whatever
that
the
whatever the
material
material
that we're using, whether it's plastics, whether it's glass, whether it's metal, it's all coming from the planet. And we cannot continue to extract, at the rate at which we are extracting. And the last thing is, we cannot continue to ignore dignity of labor. We cannot, and this is my core belief, that we cannot expect another human being to clean up after us. And I think that is fundamentally where we are wrong in terms of the way we think about waste. We think that it is absolutely all right that another person comes and touches our waste. And I think that's where we have to change. A lot of people tell me that, we need an awareness shift. People need to be made more aware about waste management. I think we need an attitude shift, not an awareness shift. We need to change our attitudes towards what we call waste. So is zero waste possible? I don't want to leave you with this question, because I think we've established that zero waste is very easy to achieve. What we need to understand is mindful consumption possible by all of us? Where I am today, like I said, I'm not where I would love to be, but where I am today is this. My organic waste on a weekly basis is about 0.5 kilo. It's that little dustbin that you can see, and that also does not get filled most weeks. This gets composted. My recyclable resource, this is the latest recyclable resource of mine, which was captured on the 28th of August, is 5.72 kilos in 15 months. The last time I gave my waste was last year before the pandemic. So to conclude, if you want to do something about your waste situation, start with segregation, because that is going to help a lot of people, not just yourself. Compost your waste, because that's definitely going to help you. Try and reduce all the kinds of non-recyclable waste that you consume. So plastics which cannot be recycled, MLPs, Tetra Packs, these are not recyclable materials. So try and reduce consumption of your products of these materials. Simple example being, milk is available in a recyclable number 4 LDPE pouch. Milk is available in a Tetra Pak pouch. Just get the LDPE pouch if you're anyway going to buy, not the Tetra Pak one. Try refusing what you don't need. This is so important if you want to proceed on the mindful consumption way of life. You have to learn to refuse. It could be the smallest thing. People would, like, somebody would be coming and telling you, here's a box of sweets. Ask yourself if you really need it. If you don't accept it. The person might feel bad once. If the person understands you well, the person will understand your reason behind the refusal. And lastly, I don't know, because this is where I am. So I'm hoping that all of you would at least start with this, and somewhere maybe later on, I might have more ideas on how you can, reduce your waste and lead a wasteless lifestyle. So thank you all for listening. And I'm happy to take as many questions as you have. In a minute, I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Sarita, for this wonderful presentation. I think you managed to bust a lot of myths regarding zero waste lifestyle. And I think you have answered a lot of questions coming to our minds. Thank you. I would really like to thank Sarita, because I just messaged her on just WhatsApp, like whether you want to interested to do this session. She immediately said yes within 2 minutes. So I'm really thankful for her, because she's doing some amazing work. And we need more people like Sarita around us to inspire us, and to basically to guide us and educate us, because in this world of waste, we need somebody who can really guide us. So I hope Sarita will
My
continue
pleasure.
guiding us and inspiring us.
Definitely.
Thank you once again for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. Hope you have a really good night.
Yes,
Good night.
thank you. Wish you the same. Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for joining in.